Hi there. Now, if you are seeing this almost straight away, that means you're watching this on replay, which is great. Also, it means that you are very active on your notifications, because if you are a subscriber, that you will have noticed that we are now live. And yes, we are welcoming you to our show, Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. Now, if you didn't get a notification, and perhaps you are watching this a little bit halfway through, that's because you're either joining us at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT, or you haven't got your notifications turned on and you're not subscribed. That's always the best way to get hold of us and find out when we're going to be live. So do head to the subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell as well, and every time we go live, we will pop up in your notifications. And yeah, each and every Sunday, we'll let you know when we're on the air. So my name's Leonard Sultana. If this is your first time joining us on the Hangout, thank you very much indeed for coming along. This is where each and every Sunday we talk about Comic-Cons, con culture, and all the stuff and nonsense that we get into it. One or two people are jumping in on the YouTube chat box as well. Yeah, well, jump in on there. Any questions, anything that you want us to talk about on today's show, any topics, topping headings that we'll dive into. We are obviously going to get into a whole bunch of bits and pieces regarding San Diego Comic-Con, which got announced this week. So we're going to get into that. What else do we all want to talk about before we go properly into the show at 10 o'clock? Two things. Number one, we have a Patreon. We have a Patreon page, patreon.com/EnglishmanSDCC, and it is the best way for you to support here on the website, on the Hangout, on the Twitter, on everything that we do. Basically, it's all about you. And I want to do my best to bring you some cracking information, some great interviews, and some fantastic content. We had our payout from Patreon this week, and I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you that have put in for the Patreon. I really appreciate it. Really support all the support. I really do appreciate it. It allows us to keep doing what we do. In terms of recent, it allowed us to pay Dan Berry for some business cards, which he's going to take to various cons over the course of the next couple of months. It allowed us to sort out our hosting issues and get that all sorted for expanding the site. It also allowed us to, what else do we pay for this week? There was something else as well, which was an important bill. I think it was something to do with SoundCloud. SoundCloud came out this week as well. So yeah, it does allow us to keep doing what we do. Admittedly, the Patreon page is also a way for me to give back to you guys as well in terms of exclusive content, or at least preview content of thing that we're going to be putting up live on the to the general public in to anywhere between 2 and 3 weeks time. Last week, I attended Comic Salopia in Shrewsbury. Had a great time. It was hard work because it is a festival. It was spread over multiple venues, which means I put in a bit of footfall, walking from the Civic Hall over the river to the castle to the down to the square. I basically went all over the place and kept myself busy. I recorded a number of panels from that, including Frank Quitely, including an Image Comics panel, which I had a lot of fun with Kieran Gillen, with Declan Shalvey, with Eric Stevenson from Image Comics, and also from The Walking Dead, Mr. Charlie Adlard. That was a lot of fun. Now, all of these we are going to be putting up on the website, on our Patreon page in the next couple of days. I'm currently editing the Image Comics one because I want to make sure that's nice and tight, and there's no kind of like major pauses or gaps or gaffes. So I want to get that up, and I do want to get the Frank Quitely one up as well. That chat with Vince was a lot of fun. Admittedly, I didn't host it, but I was in the audience for the whole thing, and he really got into a lot of background for what he does as an artist. So it was a lot of fun to catch up with all of these people. And yeah, if you want to dive in on the Patreon page, if you want to throw anything from £1 all the way up to whatever you want to donate, it'll allow you to get access to that content. Like I say, going up on the site in the next couple of days. Also, some news about other events that I'm going to be showing up at. We are going to be hopefully attending London Film and Comic Con, which takes place the weekend after San Diego Comic Con. because I'm not attending San Diego this year, this has opened up the opportunity for me to come to other conventions around the UK, and London Film and Comic Con is one of the biggest here in the UK. They've gotten some amazing guests, including one which he's gotten on a plane for the first time in ages, which is Mr. Rob Liefeld. So which gives you an idea of the investment that London Film and Comic Con are putting into its comics guests, which I'm really happy to see. Some great media guests as well. It really is a fantastic lineup, and that takes place at the end of next month. Like I say, the weekend after San Diego Comic Con. I've been invited to go and attend all 3 days as a panel host, but it is now down to just kind of like fine tuning and paperwork and agreeing on terms, etc., etc. So that's going to be happening. We are also going to be at Thought Bubble as well in Leeds, currently in communication as well with them. We'll be panel hosting at that event, seeing what they've got lined up, and also basically what I could or could not be doing. So either way, I'm definitely going to be attending Thought Bubble, but I could also be there as a panel host as well. We are in discussion at the moment. But one thing I'm definitely confirmed for is next weekend, which is MacPow. It's a one-day show which takes place in Macclesfield, and it very much concentrates on the indie comic scene here in the UK with some amazing talent, including Lou Stringer, Hannah Berry, our UK's own comics laureate, Rachel Smith, Hunt Emerson, David Leach from 2000 AD, Roger Langstridge, Emmeline Pidgeon, Jessica Kemp, Jacob Phillips, David Barnett, who's doing some great guns on his books for Aftershock at the for IDW, for Black Crown at the moment. You've got who else you've got on there? I'm looking down the list. Dan Whitehead, excellent guest indeed. You've got Nicola Bates from the Lakes Comic Art Festival. All in all, it's a great little lineup, and I will be there next Saturday. It is a one-day event. It takes place in Macclesfield. If you want to find out more about it, go to macpow.co.uk. That's macpow.co.uk. I am going to be panel hosting that one as well. I'm going to be hosting the panel with Hannah Berry and Rachel Smith, talking about their books and what it takes to get books published in the indie comic scene here in the UK. And also I'm going to be speaking via Skype to Nick Brokenshire, who's an artist for Star Wars and various other books as well. Looking forward to it. It's a great show, so do check out macpow.co.uk. So it's 2 minutes past, so we'll dive straight into the show. We've got Michael P. Good morning from Colorado Springs. Wish I could have made it to Bonn for FedCon, but Denver Pop Culture Con last week was incredible. Excellent stuff. Great to see that people are attending these shows, and wherever you're heading, yeah, jump in on the chat box. What's your last con and what's your next con? What you've got lined up coming up? Have you got a bit of time to kill between now and the next one? Is San Diego the next one? Who knows? Sarita P, good day everyone. Omahasa, I should put a link to my Patreon in the description because, well, people are lazy. Yes, this is true. I think I do actually. If you actually look down underneath where it says where the guests are, I think I put actually a link for the Patreon page down there. So it is there. Super Catch It, good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day in Kansas City, so I'm joining the hangout poolside. That is the best way to do this. Fantastic. We've got Betsy Woodson, greetings from Alaska. Into the Blue Mister, sure is a geographically diverse audience today. Absolutely. You also have Andrew English saying that his last convention was London MCM. Oh, yes, London MCM. Like I say, I think I mentioned this the last time we kind of spoke, which was a couple of weeks ago. I appreciate that. Yeah, I may be at the London one in October, but that is entirely down to MCM at this point. They're currently discussing the best way they want to use me, apparently, and I think they want to put me on the center stage or on the live stage when it comes to their comics guests. But I think they're being a little bit clever with their smaller stage, the Comics Village stage and Creator stage. They're just getting the people who are attending, the special guests, to put on their own panels, showcases their own stuff, and it kind of doesn't have to pay me to go down and talk to people. So I can kind of understand it. So there we go. Sarita P, SDCC is my next one, and then MondoCon, and then last New York Comic Con for the year. Michael P is also saying New York Comic Con. It's all down to funds, isn't it? It really is. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, So there we go. That's where we're at. Now, it's 5 minutes past 6. I'm going to be paying very close attention to my phone at this point, because we are supposed to be having a special guest. This is a show that's taking place next week. If you've if you're in the area, by all means, check it out. If you're close to Las Vegas, you may want to be attending Amazing Comic Con. Now, this is a show which I've been very excited to pay attention to, because I think Amazing Comic Con really do go all out when it comes to doing their best for their fans. It can be a bit problematic because they did have a show which was going to be taking place in Hawaii, which famously last year unfortunately had to be postponed due to hurricane season and some very nasty weather, stopping guests getting to the show, stopping attendees getting around, and it just got completely waterlogged. And this happened a couple of days before the actual convention was due to go ahead. So they really wanted to push it all the way to the edge, just to kind of see if they could get any kind of window open to put this show on. Any convention that does its best under such adverse conditions, all I can do is give them due props. So I have no problem with that. Yeah, so they have a show that's taking place next weekend, which is going to be on Friday the 14th through till Sunday the 16th in Las Vegas. And they have got some very nice guests that are attending at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Rob Liefeld is going to be attending that show as a special guest. You've got Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings as well, who also starred in Goonies and Stranger Things, and Rudy, of course. But you also have people like Jovan Arman from Shazam. You've got a whole bunch of creators from the people on the comic side of the Infinity Gauntlet. So you've got George Perez, you've got Jim Starlin, who is a joy to talk to, and you've got Ron Lim and Joe Rubenstein in there as well. You've got a number of Power Rangers, which seems to be the big draw at the moment for conventions. That seems to be a very easy way to fill up the bill, as it were. You also have a cracking bunch of comics guests. Kevin Eastman is going to be there. Ryan Otley is going to be there. Angel Medina is going to be there. And also Andy Kuhn, who's the artist on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's a cracking little lineup. We were hopefully going to be joined by Jimmy J, who is the creator of Amazing Comic Con, but also the person who puts together the shows as well. But I'm paying attention to it at the moment, so yeah, I'm going to have to look into that, and well, I'm keeping a close eye on my phone just in case he's able to make it. He did say that he was ready to go, or he spoke to his promotions team, but it was a case of just kind of trying to get him online, because apparently he's a bit of a technophobe. So if his face shows up in the corner of my eye, we will dive into that, and we'll talk about Amazing Comic Con with Jimmy J if he shows up. Either that, or this could be a rather short show. But like I say, if there's anything you want to talk about, I mean, there's obviously a number of things that we could really get into. And I think we'll while we're waiting on Jimmy, I think it's only fair that we do dive into, I think, the big story of Comic-Con for San Diego, certainly for this year, which was announced this week that Warner Brothers is not going to be hosting a Hall H panel in San Diego this year. Now, this is off the back first of an IGN report, which got announced when there was I believe it was an interview with one of the Warner Brothers executives who stated that, I think he was talking to their shareholders, stating that they would not be bringing a presence to Hall H, but they would be concentrating only on their horror slate for ScareCon, which is a little bit of an offsite that takes place in San Diego during the week of San Diego Comic-Con. This was later confirmed by the director, Patty Jenkins, of Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984. She took to Twitter to confirm that no, It will not be coming to San Diego Comic-Con. Disappointed and upset, but at the end of the day, they go where they're told, and they do have a film to make, at which point she kind of made up for it by posting a rather nice psychedelic picture with the new metallic armor for Diana Prince. It looked very pretty indeed, actually, so fair play to them. But like you say, Warner Brothers will not be attending San Diego Comic-Con. Now, a whole bunch of, admittedly, my timeline went slightly nuts at this point. I'm sure it did for you guys as well, wondering and speculating about why Warner Brothers would not be coming this year. And I kind of weighed in on it as well, with one or two people saying that maybe it's to do with a lack of content. I don't think that's the case, because there's plenty of stuff they could show. At the end of the day, Wonder Woman 1984 was 3 weeks into production, and they brought something last year. But I think for myself, it really is more a case of what is the return? What is all of the time and money and effort that they put in to put some incredible talent up on the stage, and what kind of return are they getting for that buck? The best example of that was one of the showcases of the whole panel, which was the full lineup of the Crimes of Grindelwald film for the Harry Potter franchise, which came up on stage. You had Johnny Depp doing his full flamboyant in-character bit, but you also had the likes of, well, all of the casts were on stage, and it was quite a roster. And that will not have been cheap to organize. That's quite, you know, to put them up, to fly them in, to take them out of their schedule, and to put them on a stage for a film which nobody really showed up for. And those that did were not entirely impressed with what they saw. At the end of the day, once you've put all that money in, you would like to see a return for your money. And San Diego Comic-Con in the past has been a great barometer, where you can put a content up on the screen, or up on the stage, sorry, as a panel, and gauge the response of the audience. The best example for me would be 4 or 5 years ago, which is the Legendary panel. This is when you had Black Hat, which we had Michael Mann show up along with Chris Hemsworth. You had, I believe there was a horror film of some description. There was, I believe, a small teaser for Godzilla 2 at that point. Or was it King Kong 2? No, I think it was Godzilla 2 at that point. And this is when you still had the original director in place. At the end of the day, you could hear the non-reaction from the audience. You could see the backs of the necks of the Legendary executives as all the hair came up on the back of the necks. At the end of the day, that was not a great panel, and it demonstrated that it doesn't matter what you bring, if it doesn't resonate with an audience, it's not going to go further field. But this was when San Diego Comic-Con was a great barometer for that. You could see all of the promotion for those films getting pulled, and Legendary almost cutting their losses. But Warner Brothers are bringing what they feel is surefire content. So why should they spend all that money when it's just not going to deliver? Now, admittedly, in the last day or so, we have had the update that they will be returning in 2020. And indeed, you've got all sorts of stuff that's coming in regards to the television side as well. But Deadline confirmed that Toby Emmerich, who's the Warner Brothers studio chairman, has stated that Warner Brothers are going to be returning to San Diego Comic-Con with its film slate. So you're going to be bringing stuff such as the Batman, and also James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, which will be next year. The question then becomes as well, what is going to fill that gap? We have been talking a lot about Marvel coming back to Hall H, which I think is going to be the case. But I think we're also going to see quite a large representation from Sony as well. Marvel are going to be helping bolster that whole element when it comes to its tie-in with Sony, and you're also possibly going to be seeing something from Fox as well. I think it's going to be a miniature D23, something we discussed a couple of years ago when D23 was clashing with San Diego Comic-Con, and we thought that perhaps that they would show all of their content at the D23 show at the expo. The thing about D23 is what I think, now that I've actually seen it, now that I've experienced it firsthand, at the end of the day, it's a Disney fan show. It's not a standard convention. You feel almost like an interloper if you are a Marvel fan, if you are a Star Wars fan. At the end of the day, this is the home crowd. This is for Disney. It speaks volumes that the entire setup for the Marvel stand was just about 2/3 of the size of the booth that was in San Diego Comic-Con. It's kind of like in a corner of a aisle row. It's almost like, okay, there's this company that's just wanting to put something on. Let's just humor them, shall we? It's not, we are very much the interlopers, which means when people turn around and say, well, maybe they'll just show all of their stuff at D23, they'd be showing it to the home crowd. It's not the general public. It's not a full nerd celebration, which San Diego Comic-Con is, which is why I think you're going to be seeing quite a bit of representation from Marvel Studios at San Diego this year. We've got comments coming in. Let's have a look. Supercat Chick, I've got Crypticon KC coming up in the weekend before Comic-Con, but their guest list is bonkers this year, so I suggest any horror fans check it out. I've heard great things about that show, so yeah, I totally get it. It's Crypticon. Yeah, I've heard great things about that show. No, totally right. D23 lineup and exclusives do lead me to think that Marvel might miss DC. Yes, I think I've just covered that, but I think it also speaks volumes about the order of the actual announcement of what they're going to be bringing. Their focus is the Marvel Legends, which is kind of like celebrating and backclapping of their own talent, and also Disney Plus, which I guarantee doesn't matter about Marvel Studios. It doesn't matter about Lucasfilm. That's their next big ticket. They are looking at their own channel, and that is going to be their iTunes. That is going to be their big money earner, and you are going to see Disney really going and leaning hard towards Disney Plus. So I totally get what you're saying, Andrew, but I mean, were you there? I thought you'd attended a D23. I thought you'd kind of seen it. It spoke volumes that I was walking around in a Marvel shirt, and I think it was one of my Avengers shirts or whatever, and I was just getting looked at like I was invading their space. These lines upon lines of people who clearly had just stepped out of the lines upon lines in Disney World with the mouse hats on. We were the interlopers. No, it's a different crowd, and they have to kind of they do know that they have to market between two totally different things. Omahasa, don't forget to mention or enter the 2 Omaze contests, Leonard. It's a long shot, but somebody has to win. There's a couple of contests that's actually doing the rounds at the moment. So yeah, just list me, please, the Omaze contest, please, because the ones that I've seen as well is the director of the Artist Alley, which is Clydeen Nee. She has also posted 2 competition for 2 Comic-Con tickets or badges for the weekend, and it's going to be. I'm going to just dial up who the recipient of their money is, but I believe it's a charity, a children's charity, which I think is just fantastic. Let me see if I can just bring this up very quickly. And yeah, it's I believe it's all based around a bid on eBay, so it's something that you can go. Yeah, here we are. It's being sold as a fundraiser for the Comic-Con Museum. Also, it's raising money for the St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, which I think is just a great idea. So do jump in on that. So there are if you go to comic-con.org, more information on that, but there is basically a pair of tickets that are up for grabs for that, so please dive in on that one. Yeah, do let us know about those Omaze things as well. That'd be rather cool. Super Cat Chick, the new Wonder Woman poster was gorgeous. I'm just having a hard time being excited for the new movie. I want Netflix to take over a day in Hall H. You know what? That's not the worst idea in the world. They are bringing out so much content, and they are very much bidding for that kind of legitimacy. They've tried their best by swinging cinema releases and getting Oscar nominations, and indeed they got an Oscar nomination this year, but I guarantee they want to try and establish themselves more before Disney Plus show up and dominate the landscape. I cannot say how important Disney Plus is going to be to the future of pop culture. It's cheaper than Netflix. It's cheaper than Amazon Prime. It's going to have more content on it. It's going to have more interesting, exciting content on it. I don't know if anybody has seen the announcements for Apple Plus. There's only one thing on there that I'm actually excited about, which is a drama. The name escapes me, but it's basically from Ronald D. Moore, and it's about the space race if the Russians won. And if that was the case, then the Americans would strive to go further instead of stalling, which is where we are at the moment. Remember, 1972 was the last time anyone actually stood on the moon, which is mind-boggling to me. The conspiracy theorist in me would go, okay, maybe the Transformers are up there. Who knows? The aliens are residing on the dark side of the moon. But the fact that it's been so long, my entire lifetime, since we have been on the moon since, this series talks about where the Americans would be motivated to continue the space race beyond the landing of the moon purely because the Russians got there. I think it's a very interesting idea. So do check that out. Into the Blue Mister, been sitting here for the last 10 minutes looking at a black screen, hit refresh on a whim, and I've missed the opening. Oh, that's a shame. Hopefully you've caught up with us, sir. Leanne D, I think Disney will bring Star Wars. Now, this has been actually an idea that's been touted a lot. And you know what? I have no idea. I have no problem with that idea that Star Wars and Lucasfilm could, in fact, take up the opening slot resided by Warner Brothers. I think that's a very interesting idea. But it's all going to be juggling around. Everything is kind of fair game at this point. Saturday in Hall H is going to be very much an interesting idea. Now, I think I've just seen James, or Jimmy James, Jimmy J has just showed up, but your picture has vanished. So we can hear you. Oh, no, there you are. There you are.
Here we go.
There we go. Hello there. I've been kind of talking endlessly for the last
couple of hours. And I really appreciate it. I mean, I am so not a techie, and for about the last 45 minutes, I've been trying to use about every single device in my house to try to get on here, and been downloading different versions of Google Chrome, things like that, using my wife's computer, using my computer. My son's laptop was out here. Finally, I'm like, heck with this. I'm just trying to do it on the phone. So. Yeah,
can I just say, YouTube and Google are not my favorite friends. I know that we've set up this whole thing to go out on YouTube. They are not. They don't endear me when it comes to try and get guests on, because it is so difficult. But listen, I know you're a bit of a technophobe, so congratulations for managing to pull it off and actually joining us. That's fantastic.
During all this time, I was thinking the entire time, oh my gosh, is this going to be like one of those Black Mirror scams? Where it's like I'm going to have to put tape now on everything. Like, oh my gosh, what am I doing in front of my computer? And then I'm like, I'm not that bad of a guy. So, oh my gosh, I just lose the picture again. Oh, here we go.
Nah, you're still there.
But awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time out. You know what? I've been following you on Twitter for the last handful of years, and on social media. You guys do a fantastic job of putting together San Diego Comic-Con coverage. And I know that it's my family has a retail booth there, and I don't get to see everything about the convention, but I don't need to because I follow you guys, and it's again, great coverage.
Fantastic. So thank you very much indeed for that.
Having a chance to hang out, talk with you about our events and everything else under the sun. So I'm all yours, man.
We'll dive in. Remind me to come back to that retail booth, because I'd like to talk about that, because always interesting and cool to talk to people who actually have stuff on the floor at San Diego, especially over the last couple of years. I'd like to see how that landscape's kind of changed. But it's great to get you to talk about amazing Comic-Con, especially with what you've got lined up for next weekend, which looks like.
I was just saying, we're really excited. I mean, our staff has been working literally around the clock, just putting on all the final touches for this event. And I mean, we're excited for it. I mean, Las Vegas is a great venue that we're entering in our 7th year being in Las Vegas. So, I mean, we're quite thrilled with that. So yeah, I mean, we're almost set to go.
I mean, everyone talks about the conventions and the convention landscape, and San Diego Comic-Con obviously does get talked about a lot. And that kind of idea that maybe one day it would have been heading to Las Vegas, and then people talk about the way that Las Vegas is a totally different town to San Diego. How does Las Vegas sit with yourselves in terms of putting a pop culture show on in such a adult-oriented Nirvana, if you know what I mean?
No, you know what? I think these are all like these are great. These are great questions, and especially because is our company obviously much smaller. I mean, if it's comparing the San Diego Comic Con to an event that Amazing Comic Con runs is going to be apples and oranges.
Sure.
Where that Super Bowl, I mean, that's the Super Bowl of pop culture events. We are like we're a regular season game.
Don't put yourself down. You've got some great shows there, mate.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it's important what we do for the community. So I don't think that's a put down. I think that is just elevating San Diego just at a different level than anything else that exists. Period. End of story. Now, with that said, every city that we have put on events in is a completely different community, and it has different challenges as well. At the Las Vegas is, I think, prior to our event taking place there, people said that a large scale pop culture event could not take place in Las Vegas because there's too many things competing. And I think the approach to other events prior to Amazing was that, let's sell it as, Sin City event, come on out, let's party it up for a weekend. And and then there's a convention on the side. Now, Amazing took a completely different approach because, I mean, it's a great population base. It has access to quick access to Southern California communities, whether it's Phoenix, whether it's fans coming in from Salt Lake, people coming in from New Mexico or Texas. So, I mean, it actually is a great central location. And you can't downplay the growing community and family bases of Las Vegas, the Las Vegas community itself. So while it definitely has this, gambling and showgirls and partying, Sin City, moniker, and whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I mean, that's there if you want it to be, but there's this great fan community there that has been bolstered by these amazing comic stores. I mean, for the last like 20, 30 years. So when we came in, we took a completely different approach and decided to build a convention up from the grassroots of the community. And I think that we've been really successful with that, and we've been embraced by that community, and that's enabled us to add more elements to our shows. So I mean, if an event like San Diego were to the Comic Con International moving from San Diego to any other city, I think there will be inevitably there will be some shifts in the locale, because I think every community is different, and I think what the town has to offer is different in every places. I mean, I love San Diego in that you can come on out. It's the sun is always shining. I mean, you want to escape the hall as much as that you can, as much as being in it. And I think Las Vegas is set a little bit different when it is with the temperatures being so hot. I think people are using definitely come into the convention and want to stay in for the programming and stay in for all the special events that are going on inside. because of it. So I think that puts, so I mean, we've adapted. So we've adapted to that as well, and that's why we are adding more programming elements to our show every single year.
I think the other thing about Amazing, which also impresses me, is like you say, because you're a smaller setup. It means you're more nimble. You're more able. You're able to more turn on a dime. You're able to adapt to situations. I mean, especially that situation in Hawaii, which was absolutely heartbreaking to read as it was happening with the hurricanes and the weather that you were enduring,
or the non-hurricanes in this case.
Well, yeah, indeed. Yeah, but the fact that you were able to kind of adapt and make the decision as quick as you could and really kind of do absolutely your utmost for the fans was something which was so encouraging to see and to read on social media.
Well,
I think that's
but I really appreciate that. And then, but you also have to understand, I mean, this is for the good, for the bad, and this is just the reality of it, is that Amazing Comic Conventions, it is, two crazy brothers. It's myself, my brother Bill, that, we decided that we love Comic-Con culture. We enjoyed always going to the San Diego Comic-Con growing up since 1986. And it's a small company. So, I mean, we've definitely drafted friends and family in putting the events on.
always
So,
the best ones. Always the best ones.
well, you know what? But then that also means that we're also front and center at these events. So, I mean, if there is any issues going on, well, Bill is, up at the registration counter or he's working the merch counter. You're going to see me clean up on aisle 4 as necessary on the convention floor. You're going to, see me giving out, waters to our guests as well as, introducing, panels and things like that. So, we are front and center and we do enjoy it that way too, because it's coming from a background of being retailers at these events throughout the entire country of all various sizes, from regional shows to the big national shows, is that rarely do you get to see or interact any of the people that put on the events. And we enjoyed the shows that you had the most interaction. And so, so I mean, that's why we carved out this brand of Comic-Con for, that we wanted to go forward with. So, I mean, it's if something good is happening, come on over, give me a high five. If you think something needs to be changed, you know what? I'm right there. So, I mean, the buck always starts and stops with the J brothers. And again, we have a really good crew of friends and family that have followed us out and enact these shows.
That's
So
always the best way. Always the best way.
well, and so I think it becomes a balancing act, because it's like on one hand, you see all these pop culture shows pop up, and which flavor that they're going to take. Well, we decide. I believe, and this is my belief, is that we don't take a cookie cutter approach to these pop culture shows. Our events are definitely comic book oriented. They start and stop with the comic creators, because we also believe, it's our belief that pop culture starts with the comics and the comic creators, and they are our architects of pop culture. They're the ones that create all the cool things that we enjoy seeing on the movie screen or that we read in the graphic novels. Maybe it's the toys that we collect. It's the the t-shirts and the gear and the hats and the backpacks, that we all, utilize on a regular basis. So, I mean, so for us, we've taken the approach, we've taken a very basic approach, but I think it's also the most effective approach, that whether you're coming in as a hardcore comic fan or whether you're coming in from the pop culture side, you get to actually see the origins of pop culture with our guest lists. And we keep on, banding about, architects of pop culture and origins and comic creators. But I think that there's no these big corporations, whether it's Disney, whether it's, Marvel, Lucasfilms, whether it's, any of these companies, there's no button that says easy button, and they press the button and these creations just pop out and they just pop out on screen. They start from, men and women who they have a vision, they have a dream, and they're sharing it with us. And I think that what we try to do with Amazing Comic Conventions is introduce those people to a larger audience, because I think that they deserve a larger platform, and I think that there is a hunger to meet these type of again, these origins of your pop culture. It's now you hear kids talking about deep cuts, and I say kids, oh my gosh, old guy. But like people talk about deep cuts, deep cuts, deep cuts. Well, you know what? These aren't deep cuts. These are the first cuts. And that is and so for that reason, you're going to see people like Rob Liefeld at the top of our marquee. I mean, creator of Deadpool and X-Force, and he also has relevant new comics out now, like Major X. You're going to get if you dug Avengers Endgame just like I did, and I took my 8-year-old son there, he flipped out. If you dig that and you dig Thanos, well, you know what? We have the creator of Thanos, Jim Starlin, coming out with a rare reunion with all of the Infinity Gauntlet comic book creators, which inspired, which is the base, inspired the film. And I mean, we have George Perez, who's making his last West Coast appearance, here at the show. And I mean, so again, creator of he had his hand in that Infinity saga, but then whether it's Teen Titans, whether he's coming out from the creation of Teen Titans, or Deathstroke, seeing him on screen, or whether it's the cartoons. I mean, again, these are important creators that we want to get the word out about, and I think that's very effective, and I think that's where we have been able to grow our own brand of Comic-Con.
That's very cool. I mean, as somebody who spoke to Jim Starlin 3 hours before I went to see Endgame myself, and 2 days after he saw it at the premiere, so he was still quite wired about seeing, well, not only the story, but also himself up on screen. He's an absolute sweetheart. He's absolutely, I totally agree with that. And not only that, like you say, I mean, just the fact that you put comics very much front and center as kind of like the originators of what we see on the screen and on the small screen as well. I think that's very important. By the way, everybody, if you want to put a question forward, do jump in on the Q&A. We've got a couple of those coming in already, but I've got a couple of questions for myself just to follow up that, because you were talking there about the origin of what you had in mind for Amazing Comic-Con. How have you felt that that's maybe changed over the last 7 years? How have you felt that you've had to kind of accommodate any other kind of influences when it comes to putting on a convention?
Oh, absolutely. You know what? When we decided to put on our very first conventions, again, we're talking about two crazy brothers who didn't know any better. They had probably just a few bucks in our pocket that could rub together. I mean, which is totally bare bones. I mean, this is I know you are the the Englishman, not in San Diego. Well, you know what? We are but it was definitely this American dream. Two brothers that didn't know any better. There's no, you can't go to Barnes and Noble and say, how to Comic-Con for dummies. There was not like a book. There's not a manual on throwing events. And
heaven knows I've been to enough shows where they could really do with that book.
Probably. Well, but then what we ended up doing is we took our experiences of going to comic book shows as fans, going to retailing at a number of these events. So we definitely took a approach to the type of shows that we enjoyed the most over the years. And again, those were comic book centric events. And we called in all of our friends and family and every contact that we had under the sun. And those were all comic book creators. So it was primarily straight up comic book. So it was Robert Kirkman. Hey, don't you remember like buying books from us, at the Pittsburgh Comic-Con way back when? Cool. You want to come on out to a show? We're starting it. Hey, Rob Liefeld, we worked in the past together. Why don't you come on out? Hey, Jeff Loeb, you've been a friend of the family. Will you come on out to our event? So we're definitely fortunate that way. And I think that we have maintained that comic book street cred, but definitely over the years, there's been that hunger for, hey, we want to see movie stars, we want to see media stars, we want to see TV events, we want to, we want, a splash of anime at our shows, we want, and those things, it's again, we wanted to bring those elements to our show, but at the same time, our events are Comic Cons. They are not comic conventions. They are not a Joni Loves Chachi reunion. It is enough. And you know what? And I'm not even in, as much as I'm saying that, I'm really not throwing shade at that, because it's like, those are fun events. Those are cool. Those are, those are smiles, man. I mean, those are great pictures for your Facebook and Instagrams and things like that. So there's no shade on that. But again, everybody's doing that. Okay. So what we wanted to do is incorporate the elements that we like. And again, I think we took like more of a Venn diagram approach. Hey, if you dig comic books and you dig, you dig our brand of events, what else are you into? And I think that there's these overlapping themes. I was late coming to the party, and I'll give you an example of that. I was completely late coming to the party with My Hero Academia. I saw a bunch of people wearing T-shirts of it at where I retail every single week. I see the Funko Pops of My Hero Academia. I see, on my streaming service, hey, we recommend My Hero Academia. Okay, you know what? Maybe I need to check this out. This is anime, but it's superheroes. This has a Harry Potter vibe that they all, that they're in a boarding school, and but it's like, this is really cool. So if you dig comic books and you dig superheroes, there's a good chance that you are going to dig My Hero Academia. So that's why we have an element of that at our show, and that's why we brought out the voice actors for My Hero Academia. So it's not a stretch, any of these elements. My son growing up, he was sick for a weekend, so on Netflix we binged about 12 at the time 12 seasons of Power Rangers, and so he was a Power Ranger fan. I became a Power Ranger fan, and there was a hit comic book of Power Rangers put out by Boom Studios. So to that extent, if you like comic books, there's a good chance that you grew up with Power Rangers. And so, of course, we were bringing out the biggest Power Rangers of all time, Jason David Frank and Amy Jo Johnson, who play Tommy and Kimberly respectively. And we've incorporated them to the conventions. So anytime that we bring in a element of pop culture, it's not a far reach from the core comic book ideals that we've always maintained, but it has changed and it has evolved and it has expanded. Star Wars is another example. I mean, Star Wars junkie, saw the movie when I was 4 years old, and the original OG Star Wars. I'm old enough to see the scrolling, going up.
Same here.
I bought the original toys, and fought on the aisles, with all the other kids to, to grab a Jawa, because Jawas were hard to get. So we've incorporated Star Wars, and I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, Marvel Comics, one of their big tentpole, properties that they publish is Star Wars comics. So why not bring Star Wars comic creators and Star Wars actors? And there's enough people selling Star Wars toys at our events. So again, I think that there's an element of all these. There's all these overlapping elements. So therefore, I think it's fair to our expansion into these other areas has been completely planned and has been very organic. So, but I definitely think it has been a change since since the early days of, this is a comic book. If it's not a comic book, we can't have you out here.
Yeah.
But with that said, our very first event that we threw had Robert Kirkman there, and he was starting the show called Walking Dead. So he asked, "Can I bring some Walking Dead actors?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I think that really opened the doors, right then and there. And that was their first appearance. We had John Barenthal and Stephen Yoon, and that was their first appearance outside of San Diego Comic-Con. And I remember when I was driving out to, it was outside of Phoenix, Arizona, Mesa, Arizona, from Southern California, and their management calling up and saying, "We do not want to charge for autographs or photographs, and so we want to make sure this is a fan event." And to me, I'm like, oh, how times have changed, even to that extent. So, so I think, the convention landscape definitely has changed, over time, not just with us, but just, just what's available in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've seen over the last, say, 10 years, I've seen comic conventions and comic and pop culture cons and media cons all kind of making their best efforts to kind of adapt to the latest stories that are coming out. Like you say, Hero, My Hero Academia, Fortnite when it comes to the gaming, that kind of thing. D&D seems to be this year's big thing.
You, you
That's
know what? It is, and I got to tell you, I have not found. I'm sure there is a way. So this is not. I don't have all the answers. This is definitely, we have definitely and I look at amazing comic conventions as we're always a work in progress.
sure.
It's what we do one year doesn't mean that we need to do something the next year. If something works, we will continue to build on it. If something doesn't, we can quickly pivot over events. But like Dungeons and Dragons, there's a couple of things that I got to tell you, and maybe this is my age. It's just I don't get. People watch other people play Dungeons and Dragons streaming for hours on end. Okay, that is something that I don't get. But then again, I watch Major League Baseball, and maybe other people don't understand that too. But that doesn't mean that it's not valid. What I'm trying to figure out is how do you harness something cool like a many-year Dungeons and Dragons campaign into a 45-minute panel, at our events.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there is some way to bend those rules to change things up, but it's just we haven't been able to figure that one out yet. But I know that there's definitely an audience for it, so I'm sure. But you mentioned video games. I mean, my son is a Fortnite junkie. So I mean, he's 8. Of course, he's going to be a Fortnite junkie. But I mean, something that we started with the early Amazing Comic Cons is we always wanted to put some gaming elements involved. So I mean, we've done free gaming at our events. At some of our early events, bringing in game trucks at other venues. This year, what we're really excited about is we have on the giant main theater screens where we host all the panels. There's going to be select panels that we do gaming in there on those giant screens.
Cool.
So we do have Charles Martinet, who is the real life Mario and has done many of the voices for the for the Nintendo franchise. From Mario to Wario to Luigi. I mean, pretty much you name it, he's voiced it.
His panel introduction is very good because he actually does this thing where he just runs through all of the characters. All you have to do is just close your eyes, and they all just come bubbling out. It's quite impressive to listen to.
Yeah, so he's coming out, and what we did in Hawaii, and I think that the fans really dug it, is that he introduced everybody. I mean, did his panel, but then also introduced a batch of fans to come up and play Super Smash and to play Mario Kart with each other, and voiced, and did a play-by-play, as all those characters. And I think that was a really cool element that was definitely interactive, because also I think that's an element of conventions that is more and more important, is that how interactive is it for the fans? Again, I'm an old dude, so I remember I was excited to just stand in line and just get an autograph, or I was just excited to look through back issue bins or wandering artist alley. All those elements are still available at our events, but we're also trying to add more and more interactive elements of how to get the fans involved and breaking down those walls, so it doesn't feel like you need to be on one side of the table or the other, one side of the velvet rope or the other, but trying to break those down. And that is a very much of a key element with amazing comic conventions.
I think the good convention is the one that recognizes that the convention itself is the experience. It's
Absolutely.
I mean, you can live stream it all you like, and yes, you can bring as much eyeballs onto the content as possible, and yes, you can show a trailer and whatever. But if it's something individual, if there's a direct connection between the audience and the content that you're seeing up on the stage or wherever, if there's a real kind of a sense that you are seeing something for yourself, that's the best ones, the ones that really kind of like create singular moments. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the reason why we travel all these thousands of miles to attend these shows. That's the reason why we kind of want to see people up close and personal, because then it becomes a very personal event for you, and that's what I think is very strong. I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to let you
And I'm
answer
sorry,
it.
and if I
Right?
ramble on, you can
No, no,
jump
no.
in and just tell me just to zip it.
Not
So
at all. I'm going to let you answer it, and then I'm going to turn a light on in the background because here in the UK, the storm clouds have kicked in, so everything's gotten very dark. So I'm going to turn on a light. But a question that has come in from the chat room. This is Super Cat Chick who's asking: is Amazing Las Vegas always a certain weekend in June, or is it does it move around? How fluid is the timetable for you?
well, we definitely, you know what, we definitely move around, but that is and that is completely based on the convention center. Now, we've been very fortunate that we have stayed in the same area on the calendar in Las Vegas. We're very thankful for that. We've usually been from about mid-June to the end of June, but it really comes down to dates and availability with the Las Vegas Convention Center. We are completely at their mercy. And again, before I was in this convention business, you know, I thought, hey, why doesn't this show move to this show? And why are there two shows on this weekend, or, you know, things like that? Why doesn't this person just call up each other and move? But, you know, as I've gotten older and just the experience, not older, but it's just the experience of, you know, that would be like telling somebody, hey, why don't you move your wedding, or why don't you move your birthday party to 6 months later, you know, so it fits, you know, fits our calendar better. Anyways, we're at the mercy of the Las Vegas Convention Center. They have actually been fantastic to work with, and we've kept the same period of time, which is June, mid-June to late June. Now that's been the complete opposite of the Hawaii Convention Center. They've ping pong balled us all over the map, and every time they said, "Oh yeah, hey, well, we have a long-term plan for you," well, that seems to switch, whether it's weather or something else. But we have ping pong balled over there. But the Las Vegas show has stayed in June every single year.
Fair enough. I also wanted to ask you about the relationship you have with conventions as a retailer as well. Is that is it comic books? What do you sell?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, just so the background on our company
Sure.
is in the you know, we're a comic book fan. So in the in the mid '90s, my brother and I, we took a road trip. We were living in San Diego, and we were bummed out. My college sweetheart broke up with me, so my brother rallied me and said, "Come on, let's do a road trip. Let's go." And he wasn't into comic books, but I was. I was more into comic books. He loved coming to the conventions with me, like San Diego Comic Con, and he was into sports cards, mostly sports cards. But he said, "Let's go to a road trip." There was WonderCon was happening in Oakland, because WonderCon happened in Oakland at the time, and it was this tiny event. I mean, to put it in perspective, Oakland WonderCons were about a third of the size of the Amazing Comic Con is now. I mean, just again to give you a visual on it. So we made this road trip, and by the time we were halfway up the state of California, we had this idea that we were going to sell comic books for a living. And when I was just finishing college, and we're like, "Hey, this sounds like a great idea." He had me convinced. We asked my mom for a loan that I thought was way, like, this huge amount. It was $300. So the three of us were in business with a $300 budget and decided to sell comic books for a living. So we ended up doing all these shows across the country, whether they were a small regional event, like we'd hop on a plane and go up to Seattle or Portland for a one-day show and come back and bring 5 long boxes with us, or we would travel out to North Carolina or Chicago. And at the time, these events were much more regional and they were much more spread out. So we would do a convention and travel to a convention on average, probably from January through the fall, and we would go on average about every 4 weeks, and you'd see kind of the same people every 3 or 4 weeks, all bringing their wares from city to city, and kind of in this outburst of Comic-Con culture, especially the last 10 years, definitely the last 20 years, is that you got more and more events that are closer to you. So for us, instead of traveling on a random weekend out to the middle of Texas, or out to the outside of Pittsburgh and venues like that, is now that there's enough events that you could probably drive to within about 4 or 5 hour radius. And you could probably say that from most major cities, you could probably go to a number of conventions within a 4 or a 5 hour radius. But again, my brother and I, we were hardcore. We didn't mind like driving driving 8 hours to a convention. Let's do it. Come on. And that, that's how we started out. And I do think that's how also our business has changed and our expectations have changed as well. So, but we definitely come from a comic book retail background. Over the last, since 1996, we have been vendors at the at the San Diego Comic Con. But during that time, I've also published books.
Nice.
So I've done a number of things inside of the comic book world. So I've worked for publishers. I've published. I've done marketing for events. I've done, we've done variant covers and exclusives. With Marvel and DC, a bunch of independent companies. So we've definitely built this Rolodex over the years. So then we thought, hey, how hard could doing, putting on a convention?
Little did you know. Little did you know.
But again, we still have a second full-time job inside of our industry, which is selling comic books.
Cool. Well, okay, then I'll talk about that then. Because to provide a little bit of context to this question, I had a delightful Twitter experience this week where someone was talking about how comic conventions and San Diego Comic-Con in particular was not about comics anymore. It was mostly about all of the talk and interest about the Warner Brothers not showing up in Hall H. And maybe this could be the year that they could return to comics. And I kind of waded in, stating that at the end of the day, 72% of the panel content 2 years ago was about comics, 68% last year, which is still a sizable amount of content. And you go out onto the floor, there is still all of this content which is being generated by the comics industry. At which point I had a comics retailer actually turn around and say, yeah, that is not the case. You are seeing fewer and fewer retailers. It's getting harder and harder for us to sell on the floor. You've been selling Comic-Con, selling at Comic-Cons, not just San Diego, for a while. How's it been for yourself? How hard has that challenge been to go to conventions as a comic retailer?
Okay, well, the San Diego Comic-Con is unlike anything else.
Sure.
Okay, and just like as a convention brand, we're talking about with Amazing Comic-Con, how we've had to adapt in our 8-9 years of putting on events. Well, we've actually, over this time, this 25 years plus, is that we've had to adapt as retailers at the events. You can't have the exact same setup. You can't have the exact same product year in and year out, and expect the exact same results. Now, San Diego Comic-Con, it was probably the size of Hall A and B or so when we started retailing. Maybe it's A, B, and C. And then there's a big parking lot next to it. So, the convention center was a fraction. And I think that I think comic book retailers and comic publishers were a bigger fish in a smaller pond back then. Now it's the size of the ocean. So to say that comic books aren't a part of the Comic-Con is absolutely crazy. But you might not have the same market share or the same footprint as you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, at all. Now we've adapted. We have, changed our setups, and it is still the most profitable show, but it is also still the most expensive show. And we have a lot
of hard work, I can imagine,
of our retail in San Diego. So my brother has a nice big house where we could all, flop in San Diego County and North County. So we have to make the drive every day. But so our expenses are less than, some of these other, national retailers, but at the same time, it's a lot of money going out. It's a lot of money coming in. It's significant business all the way around. But there are, it is, whether it has the obligation of, I heard years back people say it's nerd prom. You're obligated to show up as a comic book creator. I don't know if that's the case or not the case, but you still see just about every comic creator under the sun at that event in some capacity. Maybe they're coming in as fans. Maybe that they are shilling their next project. Maybe they are taking media meetings. But you will see just about any comic book creator at the San Diego Comic-Con. You will see just about every publisher at the San Diego Comic Con, and you will absolutely find comic book retailers at Comic Con. Now, that floor is a lot bigger, so it's a lot harder to find than before, but there's still usually about 3 J Company booths set up on the floor, much like a Starbucks, offering similar product, but, multiple locations on that floor.
That's cool. Like I say, I mean, it wasn't just San Diego I was talking about. I think it's most conventions across the, not just in the US either. I think in the UK as well, we kind of had a very similar discussion about comics retailers and how they are represented at shows. And I mean, we've seen a number of retailers also kind of bitching that they can't get the traction that they could in years gone by.
You know what? Okay. Also, I think the industry has changed. I mean, like,
sure.
And these are perhaps separate conversations altogether, but it's also the wallet goes into a number of different places. I mean, whether it is your, like, on that floor, it's your own ecosystem, your own economy. So when it was just a bunch of people with bins and comics, it was a matter of, are you going to buy comics from booth A or booth B or booth C? Then, you start adding a competitive artist alley. So then now those are all competing factors for those dollars. Then you add a celebrity element, and they, charge significant dollars for their autographs and their photo ops. Now you have a bunch of comic creators where the pendulum is swung from being, hey, we're not, we do everything for free, to, hey, we should get paid too. And I don't disagree with that, but hey, if I wanted to see Stan Lee, I needed to pay $150 for an autograph to see Stan Lee. And again, I don't disagree with any of that pricing, but though that there's those dollars go to those other elements. So the pie is being divided in different places. That I think that's what I'm trying to say.
It makes sense.
The pie is definitely bigger, but the pie is definitely cut into a lot different pieces than it was before.
Sure, it makes sense. I think also there's something that's a little bit of a shift this year. I think a lot of people are also recognizing that the things that they are seeing on the big and small screen have this history in comics. I think they're starting to recognize the legacy. Certainly, like you say, when you have your Infinity Gauntlet talent pool, Amazing Comic Con, I think people are recognizing that these stories didn't just kind of throw up out of the ground. These are creators that have done amazing work and created these incredible books. So there's this interest in the legacy, but also we're in a period now where Image are putting out some really exciting books. IDW are putting out some exciting books. This is possibly the strongest that I've seen DC in maybe 10 years. I mean, New 52 is not even a decade old now, and this year has been, I mean, the lineup of the books that are for DC out at the moment are just very impressive indeed. So I think that there's a resurgence, and I'm hoping that the conversation does shift, not just at San Diego, but also at Amazing and all the other conventions around the world, that the retailers do get more of a footfall and more of a spotlight shown on them. So that's pretty cool. We have ourselves, Omar Hasso is asking, do you think there's anything that cons can do to help the comic book industry? Is there something a little bit, anything proactive that conventions can do?
Well, you know what? Yes, I do. I think, and I'll try to be shorter in my answers, is I think the big thing is those spotlights and those platforms. And the programming that we are, incorporating with our shows is trying to get different comic book creators from different eras paired up and gathered up with each other, with common themes. Whether, like, I'll give you an example. At our upcoming show in Las Vegas, we have a Into the Spider-Verse panel that is happening on Friday night, and it's Spider-Man and Friends. So you are taking the current Amazing Spider-Man artist Ryan Otley. You're taking a artist like Angel Medina, who worked on Spider-Man and Venom, probably about a decade ago or so. And then you take Fabrice Sapolsky, who created the Spider-Man noir look, that was used not just in Into the Spider-Verse, but also with Spider-Man Far From Home, with that stealth suit, the black suit. And I think that you're going to get a number of perspectives there. And I think that as a comic book convention, your your duty, your obligation, or a obligation, should be shining the light. Like, again, if you came from watching Spider-Verse, I mean, that was bomb. I love Spider-Verse.
My
And I went
favorite, it's
with
my favorite comic book movie in about a decade. I love
it
that
is
film.
so good. And so it's like, you know what? Why don't we check out what's going on in Spider-Man now? Hey, you know what? I might have checked out in Spider-Man books, but I was reading it around Civil War. I want to see what's going on right now. So I mean, so it's like all these, having all these creators creates different avenues to get to the exact same place. Again, whether you're coming from the media or whether you're coming from a hardcore collectible standpoint. Another example is the 3 years of Punisher, that we're spotlighting at our show. You have Jerry Conway, who was the Amazing Spider-Man writer and wrote the character as a rogues gallery character for Spider-Man. Then you have Stephen Grant, who's a Las Vegas native and local. So, I mean, I think it's great that we're spotlighting him as well. Stephen Grant, who wrote him as like an anti-hero in the 80s. So there was about a 10 to 15 year period of time between their two works, those bodies of work. And then you have Jerry Dugan, who's writing him as part of the Savage Avengers. And you'd go, how could a Spider-Man villain become a hero, like a Charles Bronson-esque hero, as well as now he's joining the most commercial franchise, that Marvel Comics puts together. Well, again, I mean, I think that is a way that we could showcase different comic creators. That's a way that we could showcase the medium. And that's also, hopefully people walk out of there and we give away a ton of free comics at our events, at these panels and things like that. But hopefully then that starts the conversation of, hey, you know what? Let's see what else is on the convention floor. Let's go and see what other comic books are in this run. Hey, you know what? This Jerry Conway guy is a cool guy. Let's pick up a trade paperback of his work. Let's see what Stephen Grant has. Let's see what, Jerry Dugan has going on in addition. So, I mean, I think that creating these panels and putting these people on social media a bunch and things like that definitely gives those platforms, helps out comic books, helps out comic creators. And again, is now, our goal is to use our conventions as a gateway drug, more people buying comic books. I mean, whether it's the San Diego Comic Con or whether the Amazing Comic Con, I believe that everybody should walk away from an event with a comic book in hand, no matter what their interests are. You should leave with comic books when you go to a comic book convention.
Preach, preach. Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, listen, I'm going to let you get off and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I want to say thank you very much indeed for coming on. We're getting a little bit of an audio glitch there. I don't know if it's me or you. I think it's probably me. But I just wanted to say thank you very much indeed for coming on. I'm looking forward to seeing everything that comes out of Las Vegas next week. I'm presuming tickets are still available. What's the best way for people to get hold of them online at the moment?
Absolutely. You can find, real easy to buy tickets. I mean, it is as easy as a Thanos snap. And that is, you just go to our site. It's amazing Las Vegas comiccon.com. There's no funky spellings. There's no hyphens. There's no, just every words all spelled out. Amazing Las Vegas comiccon.com. You can get tickets there. You can get tickets at the event. We do have a very small number of VIP and premium packages still available. Those have a lot of perks involved. Whether you're coming in as a general admission or a VIP, we definitely try to give you a first class experience. So those are available. And you can still purchase those all the way up and through the event and at the event. So hopefully we'll see you all out and we'll get to enjoy the show together. And when you see my brother at the Working the Merch booth, give him a high five. When you see him convention floor, give me a high five as well. Okay.
That sounds like a plan. Also, just checking so people can keep up to date and see things as they go throughout the course of the weekend. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. On Facebook, you will definitely see the Facebook plugs, and that's just, again, you go to facebook.com/Amazing Las Vegas Comic Con. On our Twitter and Instagram, it's at Amazing Comic Con. So there's no city in there because we run it with both of our events. But we are extremely active during the events. So I'll give you. Sorry, one more story. My brother had some crazy surgeries earlier this year and could not make it to our show in Hawaii. It was unheard of. I mean, because again, the J brothers are usually joined together at the hip, we're joined together at the brain, but he wasn't able to come on out here. And I know I told you that I wasn't a techie, but I still follow social media. You know, I'm still a social media junkie. My brother is not. God bless him. He doesn't have a Facebook page. But by the end of that weekend, he was following every hashtag, you know, around to see as many pictures as he could for the amazing Comic Con Aloha, which was our Hawaii event in February. And we put out a ton of content up there, which gave a flavor of the show. And so he's like, oh my gosh, I finally get it. I finally get why so many people, you know, that, you know, why this matters. And so now he's completely inspired. So we will be continuing that trend, loading up a ton of content, and, you know, clips from our panels and scenes from our floor and things like that. So again, I don't think anything replaces ever being at a live event, but it definitely is something that feeds into your FOMO, your fear of missing out. But we'll be adding content throughout the weekend. So you'll be seeing a lot of plugs and a lot of shills on our social media up until the event. But at the event itself, you will see a ton of content. So it's just at Amazing Comic Con, all spelled out. And, you know, hopefully you'll join us there and follow our adventures.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much indeed for that. I know that we've got one or two people who are also looking forward to catching up at the booths at San Diego. Looking forward to seeing you on the floor. This is my personal favorite comment. This is Super Catchick, who's a regular on our Q&A, saying that she has a timeshare in Vegas, and unfortunately, she's double booked. She's got a personal thing that she can't do. She's kicking herself for not being able to make it out to this event, but she's already put it in her calendar for next year. So
Okay,
you've got one confirmed ticket sold, certainly for next year already. So that's fantastic. Jimmy, thank you so much indeed for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of Las Vegas, and hope you have a fantastic show, sir.
Hey, thank you so much. You have a great afternoon. And again, I'm going to always continue to follow your adventures on social media as well. So you guys have a good one. Thanks for taking out this time, listening to this crazy guy talk about comic books and Comic Cons and Comic Con culture. I'm a completely junkie of it. Thank you for the platform. I appreciate it. You have a good one. Okay.
Dude, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, man.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Take care. Fantastic. So there you go, Jimmy J, from Amazing Comic Con. Do follow him along on social media. Certainly his Twitter feed is a lot of fun to keep an eye on, but also, like he says, his Facebook as well. We do try and share as much as we can on both the Convention Collective and an Englishman in San Diego. Great guy. Good to talk to him there. That was it was really cool to find someone that is just really passionate about putting these shows on and putting on shows that are for the fans to kind of really take something away from. That I find an interesting and refreshing thing, that it's not just a passive thing, it's a leapfrog. It's something else to take away from and then take that fandom and continue it on. I think that's very, very cool. Excellent stuff. Super Cat Chick is talking at the moment to various people. It's a great little conversation that's going on, especially regarding the D&D. I know that Andrew Dickinson is a huge D&D fan. He's very much into Critical Role and all of the teams that are out there at the moment. I mean, we've got ourselves Andrew Dickinson. You can run perhaps a 1 hour game with a single player that can be very entertainment, which there was a Stephen Colbert's Red Nose game. So there is a way of condensing the D&D experience. Super Cat Chick saying, I don't think I've ever seen anyone run a D&D in a panel. That's a really great idea. I have actually seen where Critical Role and a couple of other D&D teams, online teams, do like chapters. And they do them within and fit them within the hour. It's just when you find some teams which can be very verbose and very embracing of creating that character and that world, that can fill up 45 minutes in a heartbeat. So it's very difficult to do. But yeah, another one as well. I usually just see a how to DM or new to D&D panels. Yeah, those seem to be the standard. But at the end of the day, I think people also like to see in 2019 actual good D&D sessions being run. There is also the critical role element, or the critical role effect, where I have seen some conversations online saying, well, I went to a D&D game and it wasn't as good as what I see on YouTube. Critical Role is made up of professional voice actors. It's very difficult to compare and contrast. You've got to find a good team to kind of do it. Let's have a look at this. Yeah, I know that we've really run over, so I think we'll do it for a show for another 15 minutes. Let's crack on. Let's have a look at some of the things that we can talk about. I think we have talked out the Warner Brothers thing. We did that at the beginning of the show. If there was anything else you wanted to add to that, I think at the end of the day, it's now seeing who is going to take that spot at Hall H. Where that's going to go. We also had someone mentioning about these competitions that are currently doing the rounds as well to win, and the OMAs competitions. There are a couple that are out there at the moment. You've got the badges to the San Diego Comic Con. It's the Kevin Smith VIP. Oh, you've also got a competition to win a Kevin Smith's VIP at Comic Con as well. These are two OMAs competitions that if you go to omaze.com, you can find them. So that's badges to San Diego Comic Con and badges to the VIP event on the IMDb boat. Those are currently doing the rounds at the moment. Michael P, if Warner ever gets a Kevin Feige, they will rule. Yeah, but they tried that already. Full of names that have been touted to be the kind of the steering of the ship for Warner Brothers, and it just never seems to hang out. I think it's because Warner Brothers have so many different fingers in so many different pies: the television, the streaming, the films, the various films, because they're very difficult to tie them together as a franchise. So it's very difficult. Andrew Dickinson talking about Swamp Thing. We've got the whole idea of that being cancelled before the second episode has even aired, which is a shame. I've seen both of the first two episodes, and it's a very strong show. It's a very slow burn. The idea, I think, for this show was to be a 2, 3, 4 season show, to let it grow and breathe and develop like moss, as it were, on the pop culture landscape. It wasn't something that was going to just smack and land and make that massive impact from first two episodes. It was a case of growing and developing, very much like the Alan Moore graphic novel. That wasn't something you kind of got into straight away. You had to kind of take 3 or 4 issues to kind of get your head around it. So it's very difficult. But there's sort of the story is that Warner Brothers have pulled, DC have pulled that particular production because of the tax break. A ludicrous paperwork error, which meant that there was something like a $26 million deficit in the tax rebate, which DC were going to be getting as part of the production, which meant this show, which already was going to be quite expensive, was another $26 million more expensive on top. So yeah, it's that. This is what happens when you let accountants run things. Unfortunately, we're in that kind of business as well at the moment. So the Swamp Thing story, I mean, it's not only that, but because it was so niche, this was never going to be a show that was then going to jump onto another platform. It hadn't established itself as an audience enough to do so. So at the end of the day, Swamp Thing is pretty much buried in the swamp. Unfortunately, that is a shame. Let's have a look at this. Another topic of conversation. This is actually something which we kind of missed out on because it got announced the last time we were on air, and I do apologize again for those 2 weeks when we were off air. This is regarding Wales Comic Con. Jamie Milner has announced that they are going to be doing a show outside of Wales, which is slightly confusing, but it's going to be taking Telford, which is a show which, as I went to the Comic Salopia last weekend, I actually had to drive pretty much through Telford to get to, and through a strange kind of like void. There you go through Wales, out of Wales, and kind of like nearly come back into Wales. It's a very strange little kind of enclave of where Wales is and where Telford is. I can understand why people are a little bit miffed at the idea that Wales Comic Con is not taking part in Wales, but I think the thing that has been demonstrated over the last 3-4 years, that Wales Comic Con has outgrown its venue. It simply cannot be held at that venue anymore, and especially if it wants to keep its guests and its attendees happy. It's way too many people having to line up outside. The weather has never been a great element when they've held it, so everyone's been cold and miserable, and it's just outgrown that particular venue. So fingers crossed Telford is the better venue. Well, it is already the much better venue. It's a lot bigger. It's got the capabilities and the facilities to run Wales Comic Con. It's just gonna have to, I mean, not only that, but they have said that this is a 1-year takeover. So will we be seeing Wales Comic Con returning to its original home? So maybe this is just kind of like a way to kind of escape the weather for at least one of the events. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I am desperately trying to get Jamie Milner on the show actually to talk about the Telford takeover. So watch this space. He's been promising for a couple of months now. It's just a case of nailing him down to get him on. If you want to, tell you what, if you want to tweet him, or if you want to tweet Wales Comic Con, come on the cup of tea. Come on, let's see if we can get him on there. We've got ourselves a couple of last-minute conversations, which we'll just wrap things up on as well. 30 seconds on Comics Salopia. Yes, okay, we'll talk about that very, very quickly. Went to Comics Salopia last week at Shrewsbury. This was an inaugural event that had been put together by the Shrewsbury Council, and also in conjunction with Shane Chebsey, who organises the ICE Comic Cons. Basically, the mayor went to local legend Charlie Adler, the artist on The Walking Dead, and said, everyone else seems to be putting on these Comic Cons, and they seem to be really popular. Why don't we have one? Charlie kind of persuaded them to go a little bit further out and put on an actual festival, very much in the vein of Lakes International Comic Art Festival and also Angoulême in France. The idea being multiple venues in the town becoming the home of the festival. So you had an outside a tabling section outside of the castle in town. So you had a number of booths and sort of like tents to kind of get comic talent, independent and quite some large talent as well. Underneath these tents, you had on the other side of the river, you had the Civic Hall, which was hosting a number of panels, of which I did a couple. I held 6 over the course of the weekend. They kept me very, very busy indeed. A 2000 AD celebration panel, an image panel and the importance of self-publishing with the likes of Eric Stevenson. I got to meet the chief publisher of Image. Get in. We also had Charlie Adler on that panel, Kieran Gillen on there as well, and also Declan Shelby, all talking about why Image is the ideal place for their stories. And also the importance of actually telling your own stories via a platform like Image. So I thought that was particularly cool. Then we had a great conversation to wrap things up on that particular weekend with Chip Kidd, who you may know. You may know the name, you may not. He is basically a legendary graphic designer. He's done a number of the titles for DC. So you've seen his work in logo design, logo placement, the way that the book looks on the shelves and in your comic book shop. He also has done a number of book designs, such as Alex Ross's recent hardcover book, is it Legendology or Heroology? I don't know. Alex Ross has blocked me on Twitter, so I can't really advertise so much. But here's the hardback book, and a book which I used as kind of a framing method of the panel, which is the Watching the Watchmen, which is the breakdown put together by Dave Gibbons of the making of the legendary Watchmen book from 1988. It was a great series of panels to speak to some really exciting and interesting people. One of those people may be coming on this hangout in the next couple of weeks. Fingers crossed. That'll be Chris Ryle from IDW. He's the chief publisher. And the reason why I want to talk to him on this particular show as well, at the end of the day, it is the home comic publisher for San Diego. IDW are based up at the military base on the other side of the harbor, over at I've forgotten this name just out the top of my head. You know where I'm talking about. IDW are based in San Diego. They are the home team, and hopefully we're going to get Chris Ryle to talk about the importance of being IDW in San Diego, and also about the legacy of San Diego Comic Con and the relationship with IDW. So I think that's particularly cool. Right, let's have a look at this. We have ourselves other panels as well. Super Cat Chick is talking about loving the kind of panels which do get good Legacy Comics guests on, with Planet Comic Con having Chris Claremont in a panel with Cullen Bunn talking X-Men, New Mutants, and he got a great draw and a draw to their tables later. Yeah, I had that with the X-Men panel, which I held at MCM Comic Con back in October. You had Chris Claremont on there. You also had Jorge Molina on there. You had Frank Quitely on there, and John Romita Jr. So you have this real legacy and recent creators kind of range, giving a real perspective on what X-Men is and its impact on pop culture. I think that was particularly occasion. Liberty Station, thank you very much indeed, Super Cat Chicks. That's exactly what I'm on about. It's also the home of a really nice burger place, which I can remember a couple of good bars up there as well. If you do get the chance to get out of downtown, go to Liberty Station, because it's actually really nice. Do check it out. Stone Brewery, well worth checking out. So there you go. Right. I've been talking non-stop. The rain is starting to come down. I really want to close that window because rain's starting to come in through it. So I'm going to get myself off. And we're overrun by 25 minutes. But it was well worth talking to Jimmy J about Amazing Comic Con. Do head to his website. Check out the show. If you get the chance, do check out the Hawaii show as well. If you're in North America, if you're able to go to the Hawaii show, do support it, especially off the back of last year when it was unfortunately postponed due to the bad weather they kind of held. So I am a big supporter of Amazing Comic Con, and I'm hoping that next week is going to be a great show for them. Thank you very much indeed for the show today. If there's anything you want to continue the conversation on and about on the social media, on Twitter, on Englishman SDCC, by all means, please jump in. Anything you want to talk about, continue the conversation beyond these shows that we do on a Sunday. Once again, we are doing the Patreon page, patreon.com/Englishman SDCC, and I'll be posting those Comixolopia panels over the course of the next couple of days. Tomorrow's panels I will be putting up will be Image Comics and the importance of self-publishing, and also Frank Quitely as showcase. So I'm going to be putting both of those on tomorrow. The rest of the 2 more panels on the Tuesday, 2 more on the Wednesday, and they will be for Patreons only for about a week and a half, and then I'll make them public for everyone else to have a crack at. Thank you very much indeed for watching the show today. Thank you so much indeed for everyone for jumping on and saying hi. Let's have a look at this. Omar has no smoking barrels. They're a mean restaurant. I think that's about Liberty Station. Shall I tell you the thing that's absolutely killing me and Caroline this year? And it really kind of came home that we're not going to San Diego this year. Number 1, we're not having In-N-Out Burger. Number 2, we're not going to Stone Brewery. Number 3, we're not going to Phil's Barbecue. And it's absolutely killing us. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll hopefully see you again next week. We are back again next week, and I'll be bringing you my report from MacPow, which I'm going to be attending. This is Macclesfield. It's a one-day show which takes place with some amazing indie creators and comic book creators and illustrators in Macclesfield next Saturday. If you are in the UK, if you're in the area, if you want to come along, we'd recommend it. I'm going to be hosting 2 panels, one with Rachel Smith, who's a fantastic comic creator, and also with Hannah Berry, who's the UK's comics laureate. So they're going to be talking about the highs and lows of actually creating independent comics in 2019. And then I'm also going to be doing a Skype interview. That's right, I'm going to try one of those for the first time. And I'm going to be speaking to Nick Brokenshire, who's the artist on a number of Star Wars books. I'm a big fan of his work, so looking forward to talking to him online. Do take care, enjoy the rest of your week, and from me to you, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.